Good morning. Let's kick this video off real quick. The intention here is to insulate this garage door. Live in Southeast Texas. The sun beats down hard on this door in the afternoon, and it becomes sweltering up in the garage. So we want to insulate it. You might notice that the top panel, the second panel, this one right here, has already been insulated, and that was our trial run, figure out how we were going to do it. And so now I'll share with you how we did it, how we're going to do it, and get it all done. A couple things. First, let me show you something about this door that may be unique to some of you. So these are horizontal stiffeners. Along the Gulf Coast in particular, and it's potentially true in other places obviously, but on the Gulf Coast, where we have significant threat of high winds from hurricanes, we require stiffeners. You'll notice there's 2 per panel section, and without these, it's not uncommon, particularly on a 2-car garage door, 16-foot door, that you would see them fold in the middle, and because of the wind pressure. So, in my opinion, for a 16-foot door, these are always good, but particularly in areas where you have potentially high winds. So these will have to be removed. I had already removed these and then put them back on when I did these panels. So, all right, well, let's get started, and I'll show you what we use to insulate this thing with. So here's the material we use. We use 2 sizes, 3/4 and 1/2 inch, and that's a fallback foam insulation. You can see here who's the brand name was. This came from the standard box store. And then you'll notice also it gives you an R value. The 1/2 inch has an R value of 3.2, 3/4 an R value of 5. So in our case, we have an 8.2 R value on our door. R values are additive. And so here's the 1/2 inch as well. Again, this just came from a local big box store, and that's all we use other than some tape. So here is one size. This particular one, in our case, check your case, 23 1/4 by 19 1/2, and that's the 1/2 inch variety. And then we have the 3/4 inch, same size, 23 1/4 by 19 1/2. And the other pieces that we required were strips. This particular strip is 3/4 inches wide. It's 1.5 inches. Excuse me, I don't know what it's called. 3/4 of an inch thickness. It's 1.5 inch width, and it's 4 foot in length. It's just the dimension of a sheet. It's not cut. And then we have a 1/2 inch piece. It's cut down to 1.5 inches wide, and again 4 feet long. And now we'll get going and show you what we use these pieces for. So the first thing we're going to do here is insulate the top and bottom of the door panel. Let me show you what I mean. So there's a recess in here, and there's a recess up here. We can't put a full sheet to fill this entire void if we were to take the sheet all the way along. And as a matter of fact, here's the largest size we can pretty much get in there, and to get it to fill that void. It fills this direction, it fills up to here. Because the top and the bottom we can't really fill with the panel. So we use these strips. Now, I don't know about your door, they're all going to be a little different. Mine, when I install these strips, I can run them, let me do it down here. I can run them under this style metal style. And so what I do is I just slide it along, getting it in, give it some help on the ends. I put it underneath the stiles as best I can. Just keep going. So it's in. Okay, it's the end to the end. And this is a 16-foot door. So if we go along with 4 pieces along the bottom of 1/2-inch material, we'll fill that void. All right, let's get started here. You see I've already installed this one. This panel goes up into the recess in this style. And so we lift up the top and bottom, make sure they're well. Okay. And mind you, they don't all fit that easy. And you really don't want them to fit too easy because you want them to fill the gaps. Fill the voids as much as possible. On that one, I put this radiant barrier against the garage door to help reduce transport of radiant heat through the door. In this case, I'm going to put a radiant barrier toward the garage. There's one, I think it looks better than all this artwork and writing. And then 2, any radiant heat that might be generated in here during the winter will hopefully reflect back into the room. So that is that. So I don't want to push it in too far. I may have already pushed it in farther than I wanted. Because we're going to tape it. And we also are happy to create a bit of an airspace between the two. You could go in and put small pieces of lath between the two to help hold that airspace. Again, we're at 8.3, I think it was. Our value. And so 8.2. I don't think it's going to be a big issue if that airspace isn't, well defined. But it's just easier to tape it if it's out a little bit more. So we got these 2 done. I lost some video footage of putting on the end panel on this on that bottom panel. So we're gonna do this one first and show you how that's gonna go. So the way we're doing it, we're using one of our standard size boards. I say standard size for us. It's like 19.5 by 23.25, and we need to make up a difference. So here's the challenge on this end. On this end, you have a recess in here. Draw a recess in here. So how do you manage to get both ends in? Well, you can't readily. But what you can do is take a 3¼ inch piece, what this one is, and we'll push it all the way back against the back corner. And then this one, and then we're putting the metal side, radiant heat side against the door. Anyway, and so then we're just going to take this one, put it in place, push it up in that end. Get the tool. All right, so get that as far in there as we can. One thing that I did, I made it so tight on occasion. It will break the edge of the foam. That's okay, I want it really, really tight. And I got what I wanted. There we go. So that's up in there. Let's complete that joint. Put everything up in there nice. It's there, and there's not a void to be found. So another thing I'm doing is I'm using our tape to tape this seam down. Probably all up in your way, and I'm sorry about that. Alright, so just tape that seam together. just to seal that crack, that gap. There's not really a gap, but seal that crack. So now we go with the 3/4 inch piece. We use a 3/4 inch piece to fill the gap. In this case though, I'm going to put on this end. That way you're overlapping our seams. Will it matter? I don't know. Probably not. Alright, so here's a little bit of a struggle with here. So these screws, they all penetrate up in there and makes it hard to slide the board. So I'm going to use my impact, remove those screws, watching carefully, make sure that something's not going to sag. The door's almost all the way to the bottom, so it can't sag too far. Let me do that. I'm going to move you a little bit. Hang on. Maybe that'll be better. I don't know. Screw. That's okay. Alright, so now when we slide up in this corner, it should slide much better. There we go. We would never do that with those screws in there. Once you have it all the way in, we're going to put those screws back in so we don't lose them. We could cut around those screws. But again, the whole goal is to leave no gap uncovered. So let me grab another screw. Alright, so I'll have to get a wrench after this one. Put it in, just to get out of the way. So, same deal. Go. And we don't want it to go all the way in necessarily. We're going to tape it here. Not enough gap to sweat. So we're going to go on with the tape. Let's see this joint. And these little gaps in here are the reason we offset the seam, just to minimize the likelihood of airflow. The taping any of these panels is pretty much the same thing. Alright, so this is the opposite panel. Here we have a deep recess, here it's just flush. Basically it's the same as any of these other panels, except that in this case the dimension's different. So cut all your panels beforehand, be careful, because these end ones are different. So we're just going to slide this right in there. Now the screws don't penetrate far enough and to bother this half-inch board on the back. Nice and tight. I like that. And then this one is going to require to be back out these screws. I'm going to do that. Now, there are hinges in the on every other style, but do be careful because your door can slide maybe. real important that you pay attention to what you take apart on these doors. If you take the wrong thing apart, the door may spring up to the up position, cause your spring to come unwound. So be really aware. Okay. So now we get that. So I'm putting it on your way. There we go. So with that, with those screws removed, this life is so much easier. And what you see right here is an area where I cut. And then the knife slipped off the line, and went back and recut it. I left a little bit of a tap with it. It's fine. It's in there and it's tight and that's what we want for. So, here we go. Alright, then we can tape it, do the center panels. We've got one more row to do. So I'll probably just leave this on for a bit. And you can kind of see the whole process from more of a distance. I'm sorry if the lighting's not great with the door down. The lighting's not great. So. I just wanted to wrap this up real quick. Hopefully you can see that it's done. It's already made a significant difference. So before I checked it the evening even before I finished it up, the top panels, and it was somewhat overcast, but the top panels that were uninsulated were running about 108 to 110. And then the base of the insulation down below was 85, 86. So I'm pretty confident it was worth the effort. I think on a brighter, sunnier day, it probably would have been a bit hotter on the skin of the door. So I'm good with it. Total cost was $140. I could have bought a kit of panels for $120. You could also bought a curtain type. Also, it's $120, $118, something like that. I feel like this is a better solution. Having had the other kit before, I feel like this solution is going to be better for what we want. Even it does cost a few dollars more and probably more labor involved in this setup as well. But this is a long-term thing. It's not up for a week. So, the better you can get it done right off the bat. A little more time and a little more money. It's not, my opinion, it's not a train wreck. So we ended up using 4 sheets of 3/4, 4 sheets of 1/2 inch. And here, I'll show you how much we had left over. So that's the total sum of everything that was left over when the job was done. And so yeah, we pretty much burned all 4 sheets. And also we had used 1 roll, a whole roll, partial roll of this tape that you see. Anyway, so that's done. Is it the best solution? Probably not. Absolutely not. But it works for me. One thing to remember too, one, you're adding weight to your door. When you do this, it's not a lot of weight, but you are adding weight, and it can affect your spring settings. It can also, which could cause the door to come up and down part way, get stuck, require too much force or whatever. So be aware of that. In my case, when I took off these horizontal stiffeners, that changed the weight of the door where the door wouldn't work correctly while they were off. Once they were back on, it was fine. And once they're back on there, and even with the foam, no issue. Garage doors opening and closing very well. So but be aware you may have to do that. Also, be really aware of what you disconnect from the door. So if you want to remove some of these screws so that your panels slip in better on the ends, that's great. But be sure that what you disconnect is okay to disconnect. So in there, you can see it, there's a cable. That cable's under spring tension. That cable connects to a bracket down here at the bottom of the door. And if you take that bracket off and you let that cable spring, you're going to have a little bit of trouble in your door reconnected and working correctly. So be really aware. Obviously I disconnected some of these hinges. I only ever did one at a time. So this hinge would be disconnected, that one, and that one wouldn't be. And so it makes a difference. And so yeah, be aware about what you can disconnect, when and how. I did also take this latch off at one point to get that panel behind it. But again, the latch is not integral to the spring system. So just be real cognizant and real aware of what you're connecting and disconnecting. So I hope it's helpful. I'm glad I did it. It turned out adequate for me. And I think it's a little beyond adequate actually. When when the sun is in the west, this is not nearly as hot in here as it once was. So anyway, take care. I hope this was useful. Have a good day. Bye.